Hey, what's going on everybody? Gareth here with FCP Euro. Welcome back to another DIY video. Today, we're going to be working on an F30 335i. If you own an F30 or you're looking at buying an F30, specifically a pre-facelift or pre-LCI car from 2012 to 2015, I can tell you right now the taillight bulb carriers are kind of a problem. On this particular car on the lift behind us, it already has a bulb out warning problem, although it's very intermittent. I've already taken a look at it. The ground terminal in the connector, which is right here, it's burnt out, and the spade inside of the connector on the bulb carrier is also pretty much burnt up and melted. Unfortunately, this is a very common BMW problem across many generations of cars, but today we're only going to be focusing on how to make this repair on an F30 pre-facelift car. So with that said, let's talk about some of the tools we need to do this job, and then we can go ahead and jump right into it. So the tools you need to have on hand to successfully do this job are actually pretty simple. You need a 10mm socket. Maybe you can use a wrench. Doesn't really matter the size, 1/4 inch, 3/8, that's fine. Access is bountiful for this. You need a wire stripper and wire cutter, as well as a terminal crimper tool. You'll see exactly why you're going to want a tool like this in order to put the new terminals on the body harness. But other than that, fairly simple, very straightforward. So you can see currently on this left taillight where the problem is, the taillight's working, the turn signal's working, and the brake light is working. However, we know that this is currently an intermittent problem. We also know on this specific car, on that specific corner, the ground terminal is pretty much melted out of both the bulb carrier and the connector housing. It wasn't working before, I got plugged back in, and now it's working somehow. Don't know really how that works, but it's pretty gross and crusty in there, and you're gonna see that once we get this taken apart. But to gain access to the bulb carrier, we need to remove this outer piece right here, which is held in with this little twist piece. You could use a flathead screwdriver, however, comes out pretty easily on its own, so I'm not gonna do that. You could also use a quarter or a nickel, and it would do the same thing. There we go, that's out. And then basically just lift up. And that's gonna give us access to the two 10mm nuts that hold the taillight to the body. Now, we'll go ahead and remove the two 10mm that hold the taillight to the body of the car. Now this taillight has been off recently to inspect this problem. So it's gonna come off a little bit easier. Taillights that have been installed since installed in the factory are gonna be a little bit sticky just because of the gasket coming off. So be patient with it. Don't pull on it too hard from one side. You could potentially crack the lens or break the housing if you do that. So the goal here is just to pull it straight back. I'm gonna wiggle a little bit. There we go. That gives us access to the bulb carrier and our connector. I'm going to simply disconnect the bulb carrier from the taillight housing, which you could see the tabs that secures it in place. Just simply press down on them, like so, and it will release itself. There's 4 in total. They're all released, so we should just be able to pull this back. There we go. So as you can see from this side, everything is fine. There's no corrosion on this side. However, if we look at the back, this is where things get a little iffy. As you can see, this has kind of been broken apart. That was actually get the connector off. And we'll give you a close-up. The ground terminal on this thing is, well, there's not much of it left. And also the ground inside of this connector is all kind of gross and melted as well. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and replace this whole connector housing as well as the bulb carrier itself. We have seen some repairs posted on forums where the part of the circuit board here for the ground has been pulled out of the housing, and then a spade connector has been put to it. And then there's a hole drilled in, and you know, this is basically tapped into the ground here on the body harness. We don't recommend doing that. It's easy enough to just re-pin the wires and put a new connector housing on it. And that's what we're gonna do today. We'll show you how to do that properly. So technically, to fix this problem, all I would really need to do is de-pin pin number 3, basically pull this wire out with a de-pin tool, put a new terminal on it, and then I could technically reuse this connector housing. However, there is heat damage. I don't know how far down the wire this even goes. So what I'm gonna do, and since there's plenty of wiring lead here, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the connector off, all 4 wires, put all new terminals on, brand new connector housing, and do this properly. So what I did is I took a photo of the backside of the connector with the numbers of the slots from 1 through 6. So this is number 1 on this side, this is number 6 on here. Yellow and black, black and white, brown, and then it skips one and it goes purple and gray. If you have a wiring diagram, fantastic, but I took a photo of this. So unless you have an incredible photographic memory and you can remember this after you do all this other work, great. If not, just take a photo. That's gonna work perfectly fine as well. Another thing to note, the brand new connector housing comes with both the green sealing grommets for the wire as well as the blue grommets, which pretty much just seals off those terminals anyway since they're not being used. So really at this point, we're just going to cut them off. Another thing to note as well is since I chose to do it this way, I also have the original connector with the wires coming out of it, so that could be used as reference as well. I'm gonna go ahead and start on wire number 1 here, which is the black and yellow. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I'm gonna go ahead and strip the wire back like so. And I like to twist it just to help get the strands nice and tight. That way it'll fit in the new terminal. So we have our new terminal, which is the silvery part right here, and the new grommet, sealing grommet, that helps keep moisture out. And for the record, this is not a moisture problem. This is an issue of too much amperage going through a small ground, and over time it just heats up and it just wilts away. The sealing grommet is going to go on with the ribbed side facing to the back of the wire. This thin part's going to be basically crimped directly to the terminal when we're done. It's going to look something like that once installed. So first thing, we're going to slide our sealing grommet on, and having the wires twisted significantly helps with this. So to make this easier, after I crimp a new terminal on with the sealing grommet, I'm actually going to install it into the new connector housing. So the black and yellow wire was number 1. Depending on how you receive the new connector, this little violet piece here, this is the connector lock. That needs to be open before you try to slide the terminal in. It will not allow the terminal to slide in and lock in place unless this is partially removed. So these are simple. This just kind of slides back like so. You don't have to remove it all the way. It just needs to be in the open position. And then from there, if you're looking at this connector like this, you have like this sort of rectangular bottom and this square top. The tang, or the locking tang on the terminal, is going to face towards the top. So just remember that as you slide that in. And when you push in far enough, you hear an audible click. I did remove the lock so you can see it going all the way through. But that is wire number 1. 3 more to go. So now we showed you how to do 1 wire and 1 terminal. We're going to go ahead and repeat the same for the other 3. It's exactly the same process. Again, the only thing you're doing as you're going through this is making sure that the correct wire is going into the correct position. So all you need to do, if you make a mistake here, is you just need to press down on that tang that we're talking about, the thing that clicks in place. I'm just going to press down on it with a pick. And then as I'm pressing down on it, I'm going to pull back on the wire, and then it just slides right out like so. And again, it's just this tiny little tang that holds this terminal in. So all you need to do is just press that down. All right, we've gone ahead and installed the wires with the new terminals. Now I'm just going to go ahead and install these little block-off grommets. These are the blue ones. You just push them into place. So we just push the new sealing grommets into place. These are just block off since these 2 locations are not used on the harness. All right, now we just slide the lock into place. Like so. So that will prevent the terminals from ever being able to back out. It's sort of a redundancy just to those little tangs. Also, I don't know what's up with the sheathing or tape that was used by BMW from the factory here, but it seems to have dried out. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that and then rewrap it with some Tesa tape. And for what it's worth, because we've all done it, we've all used like the 3M style, you know, sticky tape. Don't do it for this. The Tesa tape is so much better. Does not leave any kind of residue behind. It's kind of self-bonding. So I prefer to use this anytime I need to wrap a wiring harness. Ultimately, it looks a lot cleaner. And if you ever need to go in there and fix something in the future, you don't have to worry about all the nasty sort of tar residue that a traditional tape would leave behind. So I always use Tesa tape whenever I wrap any kind of harness. Much better. So now we're going to go ahead and install the P21 bulbs. They just pretty much just slide into place and you do a quarter turn and then they lock in. I'm not touching the bulbs with my fingers because, you know, the oils from your hand can potentially cause premature bulb failure. And we just don't want to have to go back in to do this since we already have it apart. So brand new bulbs have gone in. Now we take the bulb carrier and install it back onto the taillight. Pressing it tightly so you hear the clicks. 4 clicks, that's installed. Went ahead and cleaned all that debris up before reinstalling this. Now we'll slide the connector in to the bulb carrier. Just give it a nice firm press. There's not really much of a detent on this connector, but you shouldn't be able to pull it off with your fingers like that. So you just need to give it one good push. There we go. And then to install the taillight, we have this little grommet here and this little hole over here. We're just going to line the taillight up with that. And it should pretty much just line up in place like so. We'll reinstall our 10mm here loosely. But before we commit to putting it all back together as it was, we're just going to go ahead and test it real quick. Make sure there's no bulb out warning. Make sure the turn signal works, the brake lights work, and the running lights work. Running lights are on. And lastly, we'll reinstall this little cover. There's 2 little guide holes here in the bumper. Those will go in first. You can see here on this plastic piece. So we'll kind of just drop that down in position. The other thing I want to make sure too is there's sort of an area here that needs to line up with the trunk seal. We'll also make sure that everything kind of lines up on that end as well. When this piece is installed properly, everything here will look relatively flush. It should sit flat, should line up here with the body and the taillight. And then we'll reinstall this little piece that threads into the body. And it is that simple to fix a bulb out warning for the taillight on your F33 series. This would also apply to an F31 or F32 or F33, F34, F36 chassis car. They all use a very similar style bulb carrier, and any of the pre-LCI cars that use a halogen bulb seem to be more negatively impacted by this problem. It's almost always the ground terminal. It's not a water problem. It's not a condensation issue. Ultimately, it's just a bunch of amperage traveling through that one small ground terminal that over time causes it to overheat, eventually degrade, and cause failure on not only the bulb carrier itself, but also on the connector housing as well. It's not that difficult to, you know, read pin or put new terminals on. We showed you how to line everything up, get the new terminals installed. If you make a mistake, how to de-pin the connector to get the terminal back out so you can go ahead and put it in the correct position. The biggest thing there is just make mental notes, take a picture, have the connector alongside of you as it came off the car. Like I said, in my case, I chose to just cut it off, or have a wiring diagram. With a couple basic tools, like the proper crimping tools to put the terminals on, this is definitely something you can do at home. Save yourself money as opposed to taking to a dealer or a shop to do this for you. And the parts in this case, they're not that expensive either. So this is definitely something you do in an afternoon with very little previous experience. So I hope you learned something. If you have any questions or comments, leave in the comment box below. If you like this video, hit that like button and hit subscribe. We have a lot more videos on the way. And as always, we'll see you for the next one. Thanks for watching.